Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from wherever you're joining. Thanks for joining our third session of the Spring Series. Today, we want to introduce a new module of Automate Studio, which will get launched in the product later this year. It's about how you can use Studio to automate OData services in S/4HANA and beyond. I'm Andreas, a solution consultant here at Precisely in Munich. I have a long SAP history and worked with various SAP partners, joined Precisely about 1 year ago. As we focus today on Studio and OData, we'll start with a little introduction of the Studio modules, and afterwards we'll see what systems we will support with OData in Studio when we go to general availability later this year. The main part of the session today will be a live demo where I show you how to build scripts with OData services. Some organizational stuff. In case of questions, please enter into the Q&A section. And we will have a little poll later on, so this will then appear beside the Q&A section. Okay, let's get started. So some of you, or hopefully a lot of you, know already our classical modules in the Studio transaction to record SAP transaction. Our oldest module is over 20 years old, very robust, originally created to support users that have challenges with LS&W. But today, a lot of companies still use it also in a migration to S/4HANA as an alternative to the migration cockpit from SAP there. Query to download data from SAP. So with query, we can use tables directly or logical databases and info sets to get the data from SAP, for example, into an Excel file. And then there's direct, the solution with which we can work or interact directly with APIs in SAP. These modules are all RFC based, and therefore, they are still usable with S/4HANA, but when we look into the public cloud, for example, there's no chance to work with RFC anymore. Therefore, we developed over the last years a couple of new modules that overcome this challenge. The first one was our Fiori recorder. So here we can record Fiori screens with GUI for HTML, accordingly GUI for HTML transactions. And both of those are REST-based or Fiori also OData-based. And now with the next release, we also have the possibility to interact with OData directly. So similar as we interacted with APIs with our direct module, we then can use OData to interact with any OData service. Let's look a little deeper into OData. First of all, what is it? So OData is built on REST principles, and it became an OASIS standard in 2014. Originally, it was developed by Microsoft back, I think, in 2007. And think of OData as a, let's say, API standard on top of REST. There are multiple systems that are utilizing OData today. For example, ERP systems beside SAP like Oracle, NetSuite, Infor, and other systems like SuccessFactors, what we'll see later on as well, Workday, Dynamics, just to name a few. How will we work with OData in Studio? As mentioned, it is similar to direct. So we basically select the OData services we want to utilize, and then we can directly select the fields that are relevant for the corresponding scenario. The first systems that we target with our Studio solution for OData is SAP, of course, so S/4HANA and SuccessFactors. SuccessFactors because many customers requested us to help them in the automation of SuccessFactors, and therefore it was a key system for us to integrate them as well into Studio. So with these capabilities, we have a much broader way of systems we can interact with. But for the beginning, when we go to general availability later this year, it will be only the two I mentioned, so SAP S/4HANA and SuccessFactors. Because although OData is a standard, it is not implemented in every system in the same way. And therefore, we have to adapt the solution a little bit when we later on use it in other systems of record. The implications for Evolve are relatively easy. So we today support REST from Evolve, but we don't want to support OData in the same way. We will support OData through this studio scripts that we can create then, and then embed these studio scripts in the same way as transaction, query, direct, and so on. Other scripts can be embedded in Evolve right now. Before we continue now with the live demo, I would be interested in what systems you would like to automate with Studio, and therefore we created a little poll which is open now, and you should see it beside the Q&A section. So could you please maybe flag a system or a couple for those you want to use Studio to automate? I see the first votes come in. I'll give you a couple of seconds more to see what are the main systems that are relevant here. And I see already a trend which looks a bit as expected. In case you'd like to add also the systems, the non-SAP systems, for example, where we just have one box here into the chat that are relevant to you, we maybe can come back later on this or come to you after the session and discuss what might be relevant here. So I would say I will close the poll now, as we have quite some answers already in. And I'm not sure if the poll is shared now and you can see it. It should be, but if it's not visible because I cannot hit the share button, I will just tell you the results. So I see here that there are a huge vast majority of S4HANA on-prem, but as well the public cloud. So I would say about 60, 70, 80% of all the replies are, about 80 are in this section. And the rest splits relatively equally across SuccessFactors, Ariba, and non-SAP systems. Many thanks for that. So let's continue with a demo, and let me share a brief demo on Studio here. Before we look into the automation of Studio and how we can utilize OData services in Studio, I will quickly share here the SAP API Hub, where we can select the system with which we want to interact, and we find then all the corresponding OData APIs. I have a private cloud edition here of S4, so I will select this section, and then we see here APIs. Oops, I was logged out in the meantime, so I hope, logged in again. We support OData version 2 and OData version 4 with our current release. And when we look into OData version 2 and search, for example, for a product service, then we get a list of various services. I would like to show you today the product master OData service. And in the configuration details, for example, we see here the URL, which we will use later on to access this API. We see that it is a API which can, which of you get, post, put, patch, and delete services. And when we look into the API reference, we see all the endpoints that are available here within this API. We want to look later on into the plant data. So for the plant data, we have various get, post, and patch services here. We will use the patch service to update, and we will use a get service to get data from SAP into my Excel file. Let's have a look into this patch service here. It shows us that we have to tell the system, of course, which product and plant. So these are parameters which we will share in the URL later on. And here we see all the fields that are supported in this endpoint. Okay, so let's look into Studio. Maybe, I hope, a familiar screen for most of you. And the OData section most likely is not visible in your studio today. But when we click on OData, of course, we can select, as always, a system we want to connect with. I have some predefined connections here, and I would like to log on now to my HF7 SAP system through OData. Now I have the possibility to download or to upload data from SAP. First, I would like to download some data, and I will enter now or search for the service. In the same way as we search for the service on the API hub from SAP, I can search here for product, and I will see the same services. So the API product is one that we've seen before. Also the URL, most likely you won't remember it, but it was the basically URL that we've seen before as well. When we say use selected, it automatically fills the values from my SAP system and adds here this service. Now we can create a script based on this service URL. And here we have now all the different endpoints that we also saw on the SAP API Hub. We said we want to work with the plant product. So now when I hit the traverse button, a new screen opens. Oops, on the other screen, here we are, which shows us all the fields from this service. So I would like to download product and plant and also use the same fields as a filter. Then we have a couple of additional fields we could download, for example, the ABC indicator, ATP check, maybe minimum and maximum lot size, and procurement type, and maybe the purchasing group, just to have a couple of fields here. After we selected all the fields, we save and close, and save and close. And now, as always in Studio, the fields will be shown in the mapper. In this workspace, we again could add additional fields that we have not selected yet. We can define our criteria. So, for example, product should be a field which we select by a single product plant, and the product as such, I would like to select, for example, a range. So I say between here, and I maybe can also add a predefined value for my plant. And with this, we can switch over to the mapper and define which of these fields should be seen in our Excel file. I say automap, and all the SAP fields are now automatically mapped with Excel. And with this, we can already test our query here and say run. I save the two files. Oops. Data webinar 2026, just to have a name for this and one for the script file. Save both files, and maybe I restrict the range of materials that I want to download here, just to read a couple of materials from my SAP system. Okay, works perfectly fine. So all the fields that we want to read from SAP are shown in Excel, and we can work with this one. So let's save it and quickly look into the upload after we change some of these materials. So we go back here, create a new OData script for the same SAP system. I log on again to HF7, and this time I want to upload data to SAP with the same service that I used before. So again, I will search for product, select my same OData service, and create a script. We will use the same endpoint and traverse again. So it looks a little different. Now we see here also the operations. In this case, when we want to update data in SAP, I will select patch. So SAP uses typically patch when we just write the values within the payload. If we would use put, then all the fields would be uploaded and maybe overwritten. But this service won't offer a put at all, so therefore patch is perfectly fine for us. We saw already on the API Hub that product and plant are values that are required in the URL. So Studio knows this information already and adds the fields there. Then we selected in our download additionally the ABC indicator, the ATP check, I think the minimum and maximum lot size, and we had procurement type and purchasing group, I think. So I will also save this one here, save and close. And now again, Studio loads all the fields into the mapper screen. Similar to download, we have here, or to also other Studio products, we have here the possibility in the expert view to also select fields that we have maybe forgotten or not used originally. So all fields are always available and we can still add them later on in the mapper as well. In this case, I want to use the same Excel template that we used before. So I don't want to use a blank Excel file. I select the Excel file which I used for the download and map the fields from my upload into the same fields here in the product, material key exactly. Then we have our ABC indicator and the availability check, maximum lot size, minimum lot size, and procurement type and purchasing group. So now we could also add some rules here. So for example, restrict into which plants we are allowed to upload data, or restrict some other values. For example, let's say the maximum lot size should not be bigger than 1,000. We have here operators and we can define additional rules. So let's say it's less or equal to 1,000 K. And we also save this script. Maybe I just give it the same name as our download script and save the script file. And now we can test the upload as well. So manipulate the data that we have downloaded, for example, change some of these indicators here, maybe also enter an error and maybe a lot size which is bigger than the one we allowed. And after we have changed some data here, we can test our script. So first we can check the data to verify whether the rules that we have created are fulfilled. And we see here in our column, in the log column, that all of the data could be processed successfully, but we have here in cell F4 a value which is bigger than the one we have allowed. So therefore, I need to change this. And now I can run the data against SAP. So we see the data get processed successfully in SAP, but value D is not allowed value in the ABC indicator. Makes sense. So therefore, we can create or correct this value. And then finally, run only error rows, and this should process only the single record. It was an error before. So here we've seen how easy it can be to create such a script for SAP to download and upload data through OData. Now, I also will show quickly how the same looks for SuccessFactors. For those of you who are not too familiar with SuccessFactors, let me quickly share SuccessFactors. My session has expired so quickly. Okay, log in, refresh it, and then I would like to update or to download, in this case, data from SuccessFactors from the master data section. So in SuccessFactors, we have something called, I think, foundational objects. And these foundational objects are basically master data, in most cases, or reference data. So I selected here this manage organization, and there we have a lot of these foundational objects. In my case, I would like to change the pay range. So I select the pay range, and then I can select any value here, for example, a German hourly range, and then SuccessFactors will show me this value. So now we want to download these ranges. We could, of course, upload them again, but I think time won't be enough today to do the same round trip as we've done in S4 before. So I simply want to download this data to Excel again. And you can imagine that updating this data is not very effective. It costs a lot of time. So this can be achieved much easier and quicker with our solution for SuccessFactors through OData services. So I'll log on to SuccessFactors now. SuccessFactors, as mentioned before, implemented OData a little different than SAP. So we don't have this differentiation between the services and the endpoints or entity sets. We have all the OData services here in one section. So I say here, create script without selecting a service before. And then I will see a list of all the services that are available. So it's a long list. And as mentioned, we want to download from the foundational objects. So let me scroll a bit down. We've seen the foundational object. I think it was pay range. Pay range. Here we have the pay range. I can click on traverse and again get a list of all the fields. I will download a couple of them again and also create a filter again for some of the fields. What do we want to download here? Maybe we set the start date, the company in which we want to change this pay range, and the currency, and most interesting in this case are the max pay, the midpoint, and the minimum pay. And then we have some, let's say, kind of joint additional services we can activate here as well to get some additional fields from those. After we selected all the fields that we want to use, again, we save and close, and get our fields again into the mapper. So we see the fields from our pay range service that we've selected. And now we see here also the this multi-range, which I selected as well. From there, we, for example, want to download the descriptions in, let's say, German and in French, just to have a few values and maybe the country as well. We can define our values, our criteria. Again, I want to use a like value here and then quickly automap the data and just run it to show you that also a download from OData, from SuccessFactors, can be done within a couple of minutes. I save both files again, select, for example, all my German values here. So we see that this external code contains typically the frequency, so H for hour, for example, and then the country, and then the different ranges. What we've seen before, I think, was HTE03. So let's try it this way. And then we should get much smaller lists where we only see the hourly salaries or minimum pay ranges for Germany. Okay, so after a brief demo on what we can do with the new Studio solution and the OData integration, I would like to quickly show how it fits in the overall strategy of Precisely. So we've seen now is that we can integrate through OData to SAP, as we always could, but OData, of course, allows us much more. We've done this through the Automate Studio application, so simply basically mask changed through an Excel file. Of course, the same works with our Excel workflows. So in Evolve, we can create any workflow where we can use the same templates that we just created and then route them based on a custom workflow through the organization. For example, if we want to run anything like journal entries or any HR critical processes where we need a 4-6-8 eyes principle, whatever. Finally, when we talk really about process automation with Evolve, we have the possibility, as I mentioned in the beginning, to utilize these OData scripts as well. So as you're used to it from Evolve, you can simply drag and drop the values from scripts into your form fields. So I'm in Composer in Evolve right now, and whether these form fields come from an transactional recording or from Fiori recording or from an OData service doesn't matter. They are always available and can easily be dragged and dropped to use forms and form-based workflows with Evolve to, for example, upload data in SAP or later then as well in SuccessFactors or other systems. Last but not least, a couple of the features of the solution that comes now also with OData. The author-runner concept is something that's, I think, a great feature of Studio. So authors can create these scripts and build additional rules to ensure that the, for example, business department who has not the authorization to build scripts by themselves can run these scripts from Excel. We support multiple systems, as mentioned before. So later this year, SuccessFactors will be the first one, but more will come. We can add governance, we can add rules. I built a very simple rule in Studio where I just said the maximum lot size is not allowed to be bigger than 1,000. Of course, it can be much more complex. And in this way, we ensure that only data get loaded to the SAP systems that should end up in SAP. Yeah, approval workflows, we briefly discussed it. It's all no code, low code, and as we are S4 Clean Core certified, we can, or customers can use the solution without fearing any additional code in their SAP landscape. We come to an end. I thank you very much for joining today. I hope you enjoyed the 3 sessions in our spring series, and I hope we will see you again in the summer series, where we will start in July with the next 3 sessions. But more on this you will find on our website soon. As we are out of time, I think I will come back with answering questions after the session. So for sure, all your questions will be responded and you get a message from us and get answers to all the questions. Many thanks for joining. Have a great rest of the day. And yeah, I hope to see you all back at our summer series. Bye.